What do you remember feeling when you first opened the doors to the sights of the lands between and saw Limgrave for the first time? What do you remember feeling after you defeated Godric and first walked into Liurnia, just to realize how much bigger the game really gets? Elden Ring is a unique game, full of moments like these. Whether you're talking about the jam-packed open world, the incredible boss fights, or the many different NPCs you meet along the way, Elden Ring is a game that deserves every bit of praise it got. I wish I was a part of the hype when it was released. I wish I could have had that first playthrough experience. But you know what I was doing instead? FromSoft has a reputation for making amazing games. It wasn't just Elden Ring. They had the Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, Sekiro. Heck, even Armored Core 6 is an absolute banger. Yet despite all these amazing games, Elden Ring was different. 20 million copies sold at bare minimum as of today. Perfect scores across the board. It was impossible not to hear about the success of this game. This had made me intrigued, but again, I couldn't play it. Then along came 2023, the year I finally got back into console gaming. 2023 was a banger of a year for video games. I could list a bunch of amazing hits, but that's not what this video is about. Having a console finally allowed me to see what I was missing out on. But even though I was busy playing a bunch of new games, in the back of my mind, I still wanted to try Elden Ring. I was scared though. I know it sounds dumb, and maybe even pathetic to say you're scared of a video game, but hey, that's just what it was. Because of Elden Ring's widespread success, a more casual, non-From Software audience found themselves trying these games, and that inevitably led to a negative outcry on social media because the bad just always outweighs the good on there. So while I did hear a lot of good things about this game, I also ended up hearing a lot of bad things. Time passed, and eventually 2023 hit a slow period. My feeling of boredom became greater than the fear I had, so I caved and finally tried it. I booted up the game, got flashbanged by the Bandai Namco logo, picked Samurai because it looked cool to me, and then set off. I did the usual: fight Grafted Scion, die, find Vare, get called Maidenless, attack him, die, restart game, then find Tree Sentinel, fight him, die, blah blah blah, you get it. But when I tell you Limgrave alone was overwhelming, it's an understatement. You see, most open worlds have map markers and obvious pointers on things to do, but Elden Ring? Nah, this is all you're getting. Now go out there and find everything yourself. I remember really trying to give this game a fair chance at a blind playthrough, but after a couple hours, I caved. I pulled up Fighting Cowboys 100% walkthrough and followed it to a T. The game was still enjoyable to some degree, but at the end of the day, it became more of a checklist rather than organically exploring an open world. NPC quests were just a way to obtain a reward, but I lost the story they had. My build never changed even though there's so many weapons and spells to try. FromSoft's ability to introduce a new area without the use of cutscenes completely flew over my head. And bosses? Well, bosses were still cool, but I was just too busy dying to care about anything. Eventually, I rolled credits and put the game away. I knew deep down that this was a terrible way to experience any game, but nothing could be done now. In my defense, after playing Elden Ring, I decided to play FromSoft's other games, and I played them all without a guide. Except for DS2, I didn't try that one. Even though these games were all amazing, like I said before, they weren't Elden Ring. When the DLC came out, I made a promise to myself to not look anything up and find everything myself. It ended up being one of the best gaming experiences I ever had. The world was vast, the bosses were amazing, and the story? Well, I had no idea what was happening, but I got to fight Radahn again. Fuck that boss. When I finished the DLC, I went to YouTube to see other people play for themselves. This ended up in me finding an Elden Ring playthrough and watching it in its entirety. Watching this playthrough truly made me wish I didn't resort to guides. Seeing someone's genuine reaction to finding the big secrets of this world organically made me feel like I missed out. A lot of time had passed since that first playthrough of mine, and a couple of weeks ago, I decided to try Elden Ring again. I planned for this to be something short and sweet, something to do because I was bored. Just tackle all the main bosses that don't require long side quests and beat the game. Yet somehow, this playthrough became so much more than that. I actually ended up recording the first part of my new playthrough just for fun. I fought the tree sentinel in it to make a short and sweet video, and then after I uploaded it, I set back off on my initial goal. Step 1 for me was just to get Torrent and then rush down Margit. But instead of going to Stormvale, I went the complete opposite direction. I started visiting random points of interest that had little to no value to me, getting things like cookbooks, random talismans, even puzzle towers with memory statues. Then I found things like caves, mines, and did those too. I started going down a spiral of uncovering Limgrave, and exploring every nook and cranny, as if I was playing this game for the first time. I knew deep down I wasn't going to find any new locations, but honestly, finding the smaller things that are so easy to forget about helped me push through. I started doing field bosses day and night. I ran into NPCs and helped them out too. The next thing I knew, by the time I looked at the map, I uncovered practically all of Limgrave. It wasn't tedious, it was fun. It didn't feel like familiar territory, it felt like I was uncovering something new. I felt a small sense of pride because I didn't search up anything. I just found it all organically. The playthrough was eye-opening in more ways than just exploring though. I initially planned to do a simple and easy Nagakiba build with Unsheathed, because that's what I knew. But eventually, I switched to an Ink Greatsword build with a Moonlight Greatsword because I had always wanted to try magic, but never committed to it. Enemies I struggled to deal with when using the Nagakiba became trivialized. And yes, even though magic is frowned upon for some reason in the Souls community, the amount of variety was staggering. Playing with this build allowed me to approach areas in ways that I never could have before. I actually also started paying attention to NPC questlines. Characters like Alexander or Dialos had some of the most memorable quests ever, and I never even knew it. It was easy to remember finding Alexander stuck in the ground, but I never knew what his quest actually entailed other than an amazing reward. I had no idea that he was ashamed of himself during the Radahn fight. Seeing him try to grow stronger and be a brave warrior convinced me later down the line to summon him for the Fire Giant fight, something I usually never do. It made the fight a lot harder since I couldn't use Torrent, but it was so worth it since that would be the last interaction we had as allies. Hearing him say that he knew he could never beat me before passing was probably one of the saddest moments in the game for me, right behind Dialos. All I remembered about Dialos was just him saying,
"Tale of House Hoslow is told in blood."
I didn't know about his insecurity of not being a proper warrior. And yet somehow, he still managed to find the best part of himself in his last moments protecting Jarburg. I used to think there's no way anyone could do these quests without a guide. But after playing through it without using one, I now know I couldn't be more wrong. FromSoft designed these so that you could find the characters as you naturally progress through the game. At least for the most part. As for the boss fights, these will always be integral to any playthrough no matter what run you are on. I enjoyed them thoroughly, but I enjoyed reading the item descriptions of importing gear more, finally understanding why some of these characters are the way they are. And though I am not VatiVidya, I will say that the next time a FromSoft game like Elden Ring comes around, I'll pay way more attention to these. A couple of days ago, I managed to beat Radagon, and put a cap on my playthrough of the base game. I took a long look at the map, remembering how my journey started way back in Limgrave, and seeing the whole map covered in graces now in places I'd visited. It felt bittersweet. Even though I knew I'd played this game before, I felt like I finished it for the first time. I know that this video is really random. It's not a thorough review or a retrospective, it's just my experience with the game. This masterpiece came out 3 years ago, and I wasn't a part of the hype. I never got to see what this world had to offer on my own. I ruined that experience for myself. But I ended up finding it again, albeit not as blind of a playthrough as I would have liked, but it was better than nothing. It showed me that Elden Ring is a once-in-a-decade kind of game. It's timeless. People will still talk about it in the years to come. And I truly hope that once FromSoft releases their next Souls game, I will get to be a part of the hype like everyone else and explore their world for the first time. Thanks for watching.